We should be live on the live stream now. Just doing the, well, let me get my headphones on or it's not going to work right. There we go, that should be better. Okay, it's doing a sound check, hoping that that's going to be good. And let me get the picture rounded up here. Okay. And could we have a sound check from someone on the Skype call, please?
Check. Sound check.
A little tinny there, Vince, but that'll work. I think that came through. I'm not getting any echo, so I believe we are good to go. Okay. Find. So
we see something on the live stream.
Okay, let me get a picture
at the moment,
on here.
just the Spaceship Institute.
Right, there's quite a lag, so it takes about 15 probably seconds to come through. There, it's starting to come through now. And there, yeah, it's probably a 10 to 15 second lag. So you take that into account. So it'll take that long for things to show up in the live stream. Okay, so this is the Kesh Health Workshop. This is the second week of this series, and normally it'd be hosted by Dr. Elia Kostova, but I'm Rick Crammond, and I'll be your host today, and Elia will be with you next week. So,
we just see a piece of bone, a piece of material.
Yes, right.
We don't see all of it. I think there are more pictures.
Yes, there's more pictures. We can go through some of the pictures here. Okay, you can see that one. Should I just, do you want me to just go through the pictures here, Mr. Kesh, or?
Yeah, you have a microstructure, nanostructure. She had a bunch of pictures she sent through.
There's another one of a microstructure showing a 200 nanometers looks like.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And further pictures of the microstructure within the bone. And then there's the one after that. With,
yeah, I know what she sent us for, but okay, Rick, I think we can start anytime because
okay.
Let's do it in a different way and see what happens.
Okay.
She told me what she wants to know on nanogravity and the rest. Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
If there are any other pictures, just load and then we'll see how we come to these pictures.
Okay, well, I take them one by one as they came through to you. I think there's 13 of them altogether, and we can just start with the first one. And if you want to describe that, we can go on.
How do we switch to the next picture?
I can go to the first one and show that on live stream.
Ah, okay. Okay, we found a way to look at it and we'll see where we're going to go.
Okay, great.
Okay, so
should we restart the live stream or just carry on from here?
We'll start from 1 minute, 3 minutes. She's loading.
Do you think we should restart the live stream for this, or shall we just carry on from here?
We can carry on. You start up.
Okay. Okay. Well, once again, this is the second week of the health workshop series from the Kesh Foundation, and we're in contact now with Mr. Kesh at the Spaceship Institute, along with I think there's at least one or two other knowledge seekers there. And
We're all here.
how many is all? How many is all to
4.
you?
Ivan's here next week.
Okay.
It'll be 5 next week, 4 this week.
Right. Okay. 4 knowledge seekers from the Spaceship Institute. And today we're going to continue discussing about bone structure and how the process of creation of the bone and the structures inside different parts of the bone, and Mr. Kesh will enlighten us as to some of his ideas on how these things come about that are perhaps a little different than the way they're taught in biology class as such. And this is where we'll try to combine the realm of the maggrav and plasma into something that's workable for the medical type doctors as well. Okay, are we ready to begin there, Mr. Kesh?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much. Good day to you wherever you are, as usual. What happened, I received a few emails regarding the last week health workshop. Is there any questions you want to ask about last week before we go to this week? Are there any questions anywhere? Or do you see anything, or shall we just jump into the deep end? Hello? Can you hear us?
Water's warm in the deep end.
Yeah,
We
but
can hear you.
sometimes it goes below 0 as well.
Sometimes it freezes over, yes. I'm just waiting in the live stream.
With the mag rep.
Sorry,
Pardon?
what was that? You broke up there.
I said that I thought the temperature was to do with the mag rev strengths.
Yeah, that's the candle. So what we're going to do, as there's no question, we're just going to carry on forward. This is as Dr. Elia has planned it, 3 sections about the bone structure. In so many ways, last week we spoke about the way we look at the bone structure and how the bone is connected to the structure of the body of the man, and not looking at the bone as a separate entity. In fact, there is no way, there is no chance that you can look at the bone as a separate entity in the whole structure of the body of beings, or beings with a bone structure in human body on this planet. The reason the calcium is preferable to be the bone structure, or part of the main part of the bone structure, has several reasons. First of all, it's because of its gravitational magnetic field strength. Secondly, is because of the ease that the parotid glands can convert materials or energies which enter the body as negative gravitational field into calcium, to hold on, to keep the structure as the total physicality of the body intact at any point, be it in the deep seas or a man on this planet. above the water. There is a clear distinction how this calcium can become and has the characteristics and properties of both nano behavior and matter behavior. So the gravitational field of the Earth has a direct effect and direct influence on the choice of the calcium as the as the structure of the bone of the man. The structure in so many ways has come to be one of the most complicated and one of the most sophisticated systems in the whole body. In so many ways, after the brain, the structure of the bone is one of the most complicated structures in the whole of the human body. Every point, every piece, every position of the bone is tuned, gets tuned, is developed and controlled according to the gravitational magnetic fields of all the minerals and whatever you call it, vitamins and all the metals which are on this planet. To understand this is that if you look at the structure of the bone, the center part to the upper part of the center part, the inner part, is mainly tuned to absorb so much minerals. As you come to the outward layers, then the structure is set to attract, due to its gravitational magnetic field, so much lighter materials. Then you understand that if you cut a bone in the middle and you look at the upper structure of it, you will see different kind of strands and different kind of holes. You don't need to be what do you call a biologist or to be a doctor to do this. Even if you get a bone of an animal and you cut it along its length and have a look, you will see different structures. You see strands, you see compactness, you see big holes, small holes. You see a sponginess, you see the hard pieces of the center point. All these structures are tuned totally due to the gravitational magnetic field of the planet Earth in respect to all the minerals which this planet carries. So the bone structure, due to its vibration, due to the gravitational magnetic field, in different nano layers holes, as you've seen in the pictures which Elia has put in the nano structure, every hole has and creates a specific gravitational magnetic field which in totality of all the holes decides how much and when, what magnetic gravitational field lymph is transferred to what material to be part of the bone marrow and to be part of the reserves within the bone, or to be converted to be ready for other parts of the body to be used. And every single structure that you observe in the bone, be it the strands, be it the solid part, be it the little tiny holes, these are all designed specifically and produced specifically and replaced specifically by the operation of the brain. So If you change any dimensions of any of these nanomaterials, which is we call the nanostructure of the bone, or you block, or you get filled in by accident, you will find the whole operation of the bone in the long term will be changed. So if you can cut a bone today and cut the same bone again in 10 years time, you will find the same holes in the same position, or combination of the holes to create the same kind of gravitational magnetic field to be able to absorb the right lymph strength into the bone for what is needed. So the whole structure, the nanostructure of the bone is connected to the central part of the brain in the physical part, and at the same time connected with all the needs of the body, around the body, that what is needed to be extracted from the lymph, to be converted to what is needed. What this means is, if you have an infection, or you have a problem with your immune system, or you need certain kind of the red blood cells, then this is decided by the brain. The instruction is given to the bone structure what is needed to be produced. And this is the job of the bone, to create the environment to extract what is needed to be part of the red blood cells, and to be part of the white blood cells, and to be part of the immune system according to the instruction which comes from the brain. There is a very clear distinction in the bone structure. In the bone structure, we always talk, even as Dr. Elias said last week, the red blood cells and the white blood cells are produced in the bone, by the bone. Why the two? Why the white and why the red? The white cells are connected with the physicality part of the body more than the emotional part. The red blood cells are connected with the emotional part of the brain, that they can deliver fast energies to it. There is a point which later on we come to, and that is the red blood cells not only feed the brain structure for a fast consumption of energy, but they do the same with the nervous system. In so many ways, red blood cells energy delivery throughout the body is taxi destination point. What this means, it means the red blood cells which deliver their energy to the emotional part, they will not deliver the energy to the neural system of the leg. And this process is preset by the brain in the bone. So it's very much like you have a taxi destination from the lung, heart, to the brain emotional part. So the brain instructs the bone, this is the kind of red blood cells we need to be in circulation. This is for the emotional part, because nerve system, when we come to the nerve system to talk, nerves themselves from inner to outer the structure, they carry emotional magnetic field structure too. So in so many ways, when you speak about the red blood cells, when you speak about the white blood cells are usually for immune system delivery of energy to protect the physical part of the body. And at the same time, the structure of the nano materials which builds the structure of the red blood cells and white blood cells are decided by the bone structure and the nanostructure of the bone. What this do is that the brain instructs the bone to what structure needs to be used in the bone structure for certain type of red blood cells to be produced. In the long term, when we come to teaching total progress of the whole body development, then you'll find out how leukemia can be supported or helped through more bone structure than anywhere else. The bone marrow plantation that they put for different diseases or for different illnesses literally dictates the change of the condition in the bone, and the bone has to respond to the new change. In so many layers of the bone, it's like a filter. Everything comes together, but it gets filtered to the material which needs to be at the rate to be by the brain structure. That changes the development and even the size of the nano structures or the vibration of the nanostructures within the bone. What this means, if you take an example, if you look at one of the pictures which Elia has posted, you see the lines of the flow of the bone on the top. If you take these as the lines of the structure, the fibers of the structure of the bone themselves, every time you walk, the weight of the walking, the speed of the walking, the vibration which creates by walking in the bone and in the strands in the bone structure creates a specific gravitational magnetic field or changes gravitational magnetic field in the nanostructures in absorbing or extracting certain plasma gravitational magnetic field from the lymph for it to be produced by the body. This is one of the reasons when they tell you when you are older, go for a long, you can walk and you go for, try to walk as much as you can, or at least walk 1 or twice a week with with a good pace. In fact, the only thing which happens with the walking is that as you put your heel down, going towards the toe, by the speed which you, or by the weight which you pressurize the heel to the toe, and by the speed you do it, it creates a vibration in the strands of the bone, which these strands and the compression which puts on this on the nanostructures of the bone decides what material and how much material and how fast the material will go through the lymph to be added through the bone, to be added to the immune system, the T cells, B cells, or to the blood cells, or to the neural system. So when you walk, the the pace of walking, the speed you tap your foot at the back of the heel to the foot, to the front, it literally dictates to the bone what to absorb, what to create, what to hold, what to change, that to be within the blood cells, red or white, the immune system, and in everything else which the body needs. So in reality, the bone is a conversion factory. And it converts everything to what body needs in majority of cases, which is connected to protect the emotional part of the brain. The rest is to support that the physical part does not fail the emotional part. That's why your immune system sits with the production, with the same structure as where the life support of the emotional part, which is the red blood cells, is. So now, once you start looking at the structure, you realize how much the vibration in every bone has an effect on what is produced at the point of the production. This goes exactly the same with the ribs, with a heartbeat. The heartbeat of a man, which is a continuous vibration, dictates the structure, what goes through the ribs, what happens in the spinal cord, what happens in your spine, the whole bone structure of your spine. So in totality, we don't look at one bone, but if you look at the whole structure of every bone in the body, they all serve one purpose: to guarantee that in so many ways the right red blood cells are available in the position for the organs which they are near to and what they cascade. The gravitational magnetic field of the bones has a direct effect, for example, on how the lung changes the nitrogen into the condition for the energy to be absorbed by the lungs to cross the lung to the blood cells, red blood cells. The whole structure of the rib bones is totally dependent on the heartbeat gravitational magnetic field and the condition which the brain allows the rib to operate under. So if you look at certain diseases, as I explained last week, you see defects with the same disease in the same positions, even though it's irrelevant for it to be in that position. What this means is that, for example, as I was explaining before, in certain point of the body, in the bone structure, we see the first signs of the bone cancer, or what you call prostate cancer. In the bone, you can see it. If they give you the scan of the bone, one of the first thing you look, if you can say, if the person has prostate cancer or not, because certain bones in the body are responsible for producing and showing the emotional part of the brain's work which related to prostate. There is certain part of the foot, upper ankle. There is the bone right across the heart on the left hand side or the right hand side, the bottom two bones of the ribs usually you see, or you see on top of the shoulders. And then you have to understand why the bone structure has changed because of a cancer. Then you have to understand the work of the emotional part of the brain with a physical part which supports the, the whole organs of the body of the man. You have to understand that prostate is connected normally to certain emotions or certain behavior. And when that emotion or behavior gets disturbed, which leads to the prostate cancer or problems with the prostate, if it's taken too far that the prostate itself has to go through the phase of its development of the disease, you'll find immediately certain points in the bone structure start activating to make sure that they are not needed. And then not being needed or absorbing different kind of material through the bone structure allows certain part of the immune system which is responsible for looking after the prostate not to work. It's not needed anymore because the brain has decided. So we see these immediately in those part of the bone structure. When somebody gives me a scan of the bone of a person with a prostate, without telling, I can pinpoint that this person has this disease because of this, what you see in the bone structure. So you got to look in what the bone in fact does. Bone in structure, all the bones, all the 200 pieces plus. No, it's 206 when you're adult. It's 270 when you go born, or before you're born. These are all connected and they have a specific reason for what they deliver and what they have. If you go back to, for example, the Chinese medicine and Chinese way of doing the process of healing, and look at the structure of, they said each toe, which toe is connected to which organ. Look at the structure of the bone on that toe and see how that toe produces, the bones in that toe produce the materials in respect to the position which is in the balance for that organ if it's needed. Then the neural system is connected to that bone for the purpose of that organ. This is something which the world of medicine has not understood. Why certain nerves, certain neural systems are connected to your the tip of your body, which are your toes or your fingers, which are connected to the organs internally inside your cage of the core of your body. Because for nerves which are responsible have a connection with the bone. And that bone is responsible through its structure, through the brain, for production of certain materials for the organ internally in the core. Eastern medicine has understood the neural connection, but they never understood the connection between the bone and the neural system. If you amputate a bone, as a finger, or a toe, or an arm, automatically the brain finds another bone near enough in the structure to replace the work of the bone which has been lost. This is part of the reorganization of the body. So if you lose a toe or a leg or amputation of an arm, and this bone and the bones in the arm are responsible for production of certain materials for certain organs, the body immediately, the brain reorganizes itself to create a condition in other or bones to support and replace what has been lost. And then if you understand this process, then you can replace any amputation in a condition that the organ can grow back on, because you mimic the brain working as is done by some animals. The whole bone structure of the man, of the creation on this planet, is dependent on the minerals which were available at the outset of the creation of life on this planet, and is followed the whole thing through. And some organs, some parts were needed when the materials of certain type was in abundance. And when it's changed, the organ is not needed, it's been changed, or it stays as surplus because it's not needed to be done, or its function has changed. The bone marrow, what we call bone marrow, or the production of the immune system, works on the same basis. If you lose your a bone due to whatever reason, replacement, amputation, loss, or whatever, the brain automatically takes another bone in another position which can change its characteristics near enough to what is lost to produce and replace the material which is needed to be produced. And automatically this instruction goes to your thymus in change of the condition of the liquidity of the lymph, how solid, how denser he wants it to, and immediately goes to your parotid glands, which inform the bone in what material through the brain they need to be changed to. So if one part of the bone was producing phosphor, and now you lost a leg which was producing a major part of the calcium, thymus instructs the bone, the brain, and brain in turn instructs the, changes the structure of the bone in the nano layers for the calcium to produce instead of the phosphorus. So the change comes by change of the gravity. This is what we shown in the what do you call it, in the nanotechnology part of the Keshe Foundation. You change a plate, but you keep one common plate. If you put a copper with zinc, you put copper with aluminum, you put copper with copper, you get different materials. And this is how the bone structure works. Keeps calcium as a reference, and then by changing the gravitational magnetic field in the nano layers, different materials are produced as the brain sends information for it to be done. And then the whole process goes back through your immune system, through your limbs, through your thymus gland, to how thick this material conversion is going to be at the point of need. So the beginning structure comes through the brain to the bone, bone converts, makes it available at the conversion, at the package for the lymph, for the parotid glands to dictate the amount, and for the thymus to dictate the liquidity or the solidity of the same matter in different positions. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter how, what is needed, immediately the whole transformation is done through the bone. The whole structure of the bone is in fact a nano factory which changes its position and its size according to the environment and the instruction as it comes from the brain. So the brain decides how tall a bone is going to be, how short a bone is going to be, why it has to be short, why it has to be taller, what has been received that it needs to be taller and bigger and wider or whatever. And that the bone carries that instruction, that material for production and protection of the physical part to guarantee the life of the emotional part. So the structures which Elia has put on in so many ways, in totality they work all together to produce and to guarantee the full production of the immune system and the feeding and protection system of the body. And this is the function of the bone, a conversion factory which its operation is totally controlled by the physical part in respect to the emotional part of the brain. And as I said before, to keep these nanomaterials, every hole in the right size in every bone, every strand of the what you see in the bone to be in a perfect position to create the right vibration, gravitational magnetic field in certain nano layers of the bone to absorb certain minerals or certain magnetic gravitational field as metals from the lymph is all controlled by the brain. And as I said before, maybe again for the first time, the world of science understands that why the brain of the man is so big. Because the more functions, the more things, the more pressures are put on the emotional part, then the emotional part has to instruct the physical part, and the physical part of the brain has to control the physical part of the bone and everything else that for the emotional part to be at ease and comfort. What I was trying to explain is that the emotional part of the body, for it to exist and to be at comfort, that it does not, because the emotional part is a copy of the soul of the man in so many ways. It does not take more than what it needs, and it does not give more than what it can hold on to its existence. So in the connection between the emotional and the physical part, it's clearly demonstrated in a group of people who went in Central East Asia to an island, and in this island everything was a small island, everything caves, everything was short. It's well documented. You can go to on the internet and find out. And in one generation, the height of the people and the height of the elephants which they took with them all shortened to half. It wasn't just the man who lost their heights to be able to live in the caves in the island. Even the elephants which they were lying on in one generation were reduced to half by size, to height. So this connection between the emotional part which controls the physical part is not only, what do you call it, connected to the man. So the gravitational fields of the planet in respect to the emotional part and what is physically available, has been available, has led for the man to have the calcium on his bone structure. And in calcium being both in a matter and in a gans and in a nano structure, very similar in its operation and its construction, has led for it to be the main structural part of the life on this planet. And in a very short time, we can show the operation of the bone in the nanomaterials which you have and you create and you produce in the other side of the foundation. Up to now, in the nanomaterials, you only look at the. I can hear myself back. Yeah. In so many ways, you once you start working with GANs of the materials in interaction with nano layers, and we go a step further in the next few weeks and few months, you will be able to replicate the operation of the bone of the man in the nano layers and the GANs, and conversion of the energy into GANs while they go through the nano layers. In fact, you do the reverse at the moment with the plates you have and the materials you produce. Then you can see, when you become expert in dictating the vibration and the layering of your nano layers in different sections as a layering, then you will be able to produce and replicate the work of the bone structure of the man. And in most cases, you will find out that it leads or absorbs and converts the calcium into solid state. If you go back to the workshops we had, I've explained in Raman spectroscopy, we see Ca, CO3. Then you'll see how in having different nano layers of structure in the body, calcium will be produced naturally through the vibration of the lymphs which go through the body of the man, and in the conversion through nano layers that they lead to be a structure of the bone inside. And then as the bone grows outside in, these calciums, as they absorb and they have a high link potential in gravitational magnetic field of the GANs, they link up to the immune system, to T cells and B cells. Because then they are in the same gravitational magnetic field to be absorbed or to be connected to the position which they go to. The whole structure of the bone and what is released by it and what is absorbed by it then links to phosphor and to calcium. The reason for bone structure creating and absorbing, converting lymph to phosphor is because through the phosphor, the amino acid chain of DNA, and in parallel, the gravitational magnetic field of the helix structure of the RNA in conjunction with the DNA is produced. Then the physicality and the information of physicality is preserved within the structure of the bone, within the structure of the conversion of the calcium in the DNA and in the RNA of the race. So in totality, the whole structure of the bone is not only part of the immune system, but part of the separation, conversion of the phosphor within the lymph for ever need for production of the DNA, for the link within DNA structure. And then you understand how important the bone structure is. Without the bone structure, all the information which is kept in the structure of the animals which have bone structure. Some animals don't, but they use the same process in a different way, conversion of material. The DNA and RNA is preserved, because if you, in a later time, we show in the GANS state in conjunction with nano layers how the helix structure, gravitational magnetic positioning of the amino acid leads to the shape of the helix structure of the DNA, and in center support of it, the RNA. And without phosphor, which is converted in the bone, this cannot take place. So the bone is a trusted part by the brain to ensure the guarantee the survival of the brain itself, the emotional part. And secondly, for transfer of the information, for regeneration to be passed on to the next generation. And in so many cases, people say how you transfer diseases or you transfer certain defects. Then in the future, if the scientists and the doctors start looking at to the bone structure, the changes in the bone structure, they'll find out how they can change the DNA where the defect is by changing the bone structure. That's why they all look for changes where the change has come in DNA. There is a fault in this chain of DNA. Go back and see where the change has come. And in most of the cases, the position of the phosphor which is created in the bone by the destruction of the brain has taken that position in the nanostructure of the bone. So even what has become now fashionable, that the doctors work with DNA and they say this is the fault, the genome and the rest of it, you can change it by looking at which part of the bone is responsible for creation and positioning of the certain phosphorus in gravitational magnetic field, which ends up in the DNA. And it's very easy then to stop most of the defects which are genetically inherited. They're looking in the wrong place. And that's why it looks so difficult trying to find defects. How can we correct the defects and change and manipulate with the genes? In a much easier way, if you can manipulate the bone structure, which produces the phosphor and all the amino acids for the DNA, and then finding out in that structure what information sits with the RNA, then you can do the job much easier. And this is some of the things which we do in Keshe Foundation, and they tell us it's just a gimmick, because we understand in which part of the bone we have to interfere with. So you don't need to go and change bone marrow when somebody's got a immune system problem. You don't need to go and change something when you know through the structure of the bone which part of the bone is responsible for which structure, and you change the environment of the bone in that structure, and then you find that disease is not there. Bone cancer can be literally rectified directly from the bone structure within the body of the man. There is no need for chemotherapy, there is no need for all sorts of things, and there is no need for man to die because of the bone cancer, or what you call blood cancer. This is something which the doctors don't understand. They go for a bone marrow, but where does the bone marrow come from? From the structure of the bone. Why do you go through these heavy operations and changing of bone marrow, finding the matching bone marrow? To be able to save a life. Change the environment of the bone which is responsible for that disease. You've done the job without a single operation. This is what you do instead of the vibration of the strings or then cavities or nano cavities within the bone structure. Instead of the bone changes its characteristics in a certain position, you create that change in the system which you give to your to your person who's under observation. Then you don't need to do operation. You don't need to do these things. Look why people become frail. Look why people become bent. While people, when they get older, they get all sorts of diseases, all sorts of weaknesses, because they cannot walk properly anymore. If you get an old person just to tap their foot, I've explained this before, 30, 40 times a day, just the heel of the foot, that they create the vibration in the bone, you'll find out you change 60% of the health problems. They don't need to walk. We've done this so many times. And then as they change, they can walk, they can do things. Because what you do, instead of putting a system, instead of changing a bone marrow, when a person cannot walk to create the right vibration in the bone structure, then the magnetic field strength of the vibration of the bones change, and that change brings a change in the immune system. This brings changes in the red blood cells strength, the white blood cell strength, and then it creates all the other problems. Why active people live a long life? Because when you're active and you walk around, you create that vibration in your bone structure, which creates exactly near enough to what you had when you were younger. Death is the inevitability for a man. Man is born to die from the second he's born. It's not being afraid of dying. He is being able to understand and serve during the time you serve here, you live here. But you don't need to suffer while you're here. And if with a simple process of getting, if they in the old people's home, get the old people just to stand on the stick, even on the frame, and they start learning to tap their feet by the heel 30, 40 times a day, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, you will find most of the beds in the old people's home will be empty. We've done this. One of the first things you see, especially with people who are just about to go to wheelchair, just about to, with the ILS, with MS, I always ask them, try to tap your foot as much as you can. At the beginning it cannot be done because the foot is there, they don't heal it, they don't see it. But in the process, as they manage to keep the tapping of the heel, which creates the right vibration in the bone structure, the brain receives the message, I'm alive, I want to exist, I want to live physically. And then it puts a change on the emotional side. And that's how you see the changes we do in ALS or in MS or in any other diseases. It's understanding the process, the operation of the bone. And then you can interfere. You can put shoes that interfere with the bone structure of the toe, which that bone structure through his nervous system, internal system, affects the organ inside the body. You don't need to do any work. You don't need to put chemicals in to change something to force and then have something else because you put chemicals in. The body takes what it needs. Even if you make a wrong system, when you start making systems, you never make a wrong system because the body only takes what it needs from that position. The surplus is not there because it's not in its range to interact with. It's very much as I say, I don't believe in it, but they say neutrinos goes right through your body because it's a high level energy pack. It's the same way. So understand the bone structure, if you have time and you're interested in the world of the medicine or health, try to go to a butcher and buy a few bones and cut them in different ways and look at the structure. Understand the structure. Look at the structure of the bone of a chicken. Look at the structure of the bone of a lamb. And then you understand why one is so light and how it's been constructed to be so light. And one is so heavy and why it's constructed to be in that way. And what body they support and what organs they support. Is there any questions?
I had a question, Mr. Cash, on the use of sound to, say, rejuvenate or activate a bone structure that might have problems. You mentioned tapping. Well, sound is like vibration or tapping at a
Yeah,
faster
when you
level.
tap, no, let me explain the tapping. When you tap, you produce both magnetical and gravitational field in respect to the earth condition. So you work on a plasma level. You don't work on a wave level. There is a big difference. There is a huge difference. When you shake your reactor, when you have a Earth or a planet on the move, the speed of the move, the speed of the change of the move dictates everything what happens in that planet. It's the same with your body. Because the speed, when it changes the gravitational and magnetic field. When you create these sound machines and they do this with their sound and everything else, and it sometimes works, but when you do the tapping, you change the position and the structure in both gravity and magnetic field. And that's why you get a response from the nano layers, because they are made of gravitational magnetic field, because they are plasma containers, empty plasma containers. The calcium around the hole decides the magnetic field in the porosity and the field which it creates to absorb the matter. So when you change the size of the hole by vibration, you absorb, you interact with a matching field which you need from the plasma. In fact, if you understand the difference between tapping and sound, in the world of science, in the world of physics up to now, we only knew iron or materials which are near iron to be magnetic. And we always said that's the only thing which is magnetic. Now that we start producing gravitational magnetic reactors, we see, by changing their speed, by changing their content, by changing the gases inside, we create different gravitational magnetic fields in the environment. So, with the present knowledge, which at the moment is going through the foundation, you understand that now you can create a magnet even for plastic, even for wood. Because you can create the parallel magnetic gravitational field of the structure of gravitational magnets of the wood, the way iron has been done for iron. The same thing happens in the bone of the man. Now, if you understand that part, that is needs both gravity and magnetic field, because when you absorb phosphor, phosphor is not a wave, it's a plasma. It has both gravitational and magnetic field structure. So when you create that vibration, it changes gravitational magnetic field within the bone, then it absorbs what it needs. Sometimes the sound, because of certain interaction with the matter part, can make a change. But the principle, you have to create a change according to how it's been set, which is both gravitational magnetic field. The tapping, the way that's why I say homeopathy, they tap it, but they don't
Right.
understand that by tapping it, they do a different thing. But in that tapping, you shake the, what do you call it, to the tune of the oxygen. It's the paper which we have published. A lot of people, when they have a pain in their arm or somewhere they hit, they tap it.
Mm-hmm.
Then
I've
the
done that
pain goes.
myself. Well, to
So
me, that
you have
that clarifies quite a bit that concept of tapping, which I've heard of before and looked into a little bit, but now it becomes much more clear from what you've said how that works. In terms of the sound, I had in particular the image of a didgeridoo, which is a very low bass kind of sound, almost like a voice too. So I'm thinking, could voice or those low bass kind of pulsating sounds, it's more of a, not really a vibration, but more of a shaking almost that occurs. So I'm thinking that might possibly work. Or what about rock music when it's really loud? That can shake you too, but that might be detrimental.
huh?
It's just because you shake
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's good, right? It has to
No, but
be,
depends how you shake it, huh?
yeah, it all depends on how you shake it.
And
That's
how
right.
you create the shake. This is
Yes,
the point.
yes.
Yeah. But the thing is, when you tap, when you create tapping, you you create not a noise, but you create both changes in both fields of the matter. And then you attract certain conditions in the neurosystem that does not transfer or in a way sends the information back to the brain that there is that the thing is okay. There is one day I explained to you the reason for the tapping, and it's very much connected to the work of the homeopathy and the oxygen within the cancer structure of the water of the body, which transfers the information in a certain way through the carbon of the amino acid. This is a very well detailed. I can go through it in very much depth. But the vibration after walking and tapping, when you tap a foot, you create a vibration which is both gravitational and magnetic. And that changes the condition. If you can get a hammer and go into your bone and tap on the bone itself, you do the same job. Because then you vibrate the bone, which creates the vibration in the plasmatic form, in the liquid of the bone, and in the structure of the nanostructure of the solid part of the bone. You got to look at the structure of the bone when it goes, if you look at the bone marrow, bone marrow is very much like your oil well. As the amino acid on the upper layer changes and it goes deeper and it absorbs more and more of the composition of the materials within the earth, when it gets to a point, then we dig it out and bring it out, oil is black. Look at when next time when you cut a bone marrow, look at the structure and the color of it. And then you understand the process by the way the bone has produced the bone marrow and the concentration of it, and which part is much stronger for which part of the immune system of the body. The bone marrow closer to the wall of the bone internally are of the weakest order. As you go into the center of the bone marrow, as it's taken longer and it's absorbed more energy from the environment as it goes to the center, That bone marrow, when it released as part of the T cell or B cells or part of the immune system, then it has a much potency, carries much power to handle the more, what do you call it, stronger viruses or germs or what the body needs to protect itself. You don't need to change the whole bone marrow. If you can increase the potency of the bone marrow across its cross section in the whole length of the bone, then you'll find out a lot of immune system medicine goes into the bin. We tested this and it works, it's correct. But you have to realize something which is very important. You have to understand the full structure of the bone. You have to understand the full structure of the um, bone marrow. And you have to understand the structure of the lymph outside. That you allow a certain kind of lymph to cross the bone at a certain point that becomes part of the bone marrow that the body needs to protect itself in respect to a condition. Or you put it in another way, is needed to become part of the red or white blood cells. If you can understand and build the process system which can do this, we've done it a number of times, then you can see the change in the health of the person. So let's carry on. Sorry about the interruption.
Okay, it sounds pretty
okay,
good there. I
first
think
question.
we'll be okay.
Yeah. Okay, what is there another question?
Well, where were we? We were discussing
The tapping, which we
the
explained.
tapping, yes, and the sound thing. And then there was a question about light and whether light could be used as a therapy in the manner you're speaking of, with interacting with the plasmatic fields.
Therapy, in a way, yes. In a way, no. The light, because depends on in respect into what illness or condition. Therapy